All right, welcome back to the Pure Athlete Podcast. I am Dr. Dustin Boston here with the AT Aaron Ruggieri. We are also having special guests today, so we're getting ready to dive in. We will let them introduce themselves. Dr. Trent Nessler we've had on before. He has brought a guest with him today. Logan, let me just kind of start with you as we dive in here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. We've done this once with Trent on another podcast, but let's start with you. We'll give you the honors.
Awesome, yeah. Logan Cobb. I'm an ATC like Aaron, also a CSCS, and I've got a list this long of certifications that I forgot about. Personal training, kettlebells, all that good kind of stuff, Did some time at the PGA Tour working with some professional golfers. I train clients when I'm at home, anyone from 12 to 78, 80, whatever, whoever needs whatever.
Yeah.
And then about 2.5 years ago, came across Ready Rebound. Their mission is to help first responders. I kind of love that idea. Always wanted to serve and help out any way I can. And then I started on our recover side of the business, and then came over to work with this guy on the prevention side. Yeah. It's been a rough 1.5 years, but it's no, I'm learning a ton.
I hear you're learning a ton about jiu-jitsu.
I am. Yes.
Jiu-jitsu. His favorite topic.
He still
brings it up every 10 minutes.
I still haven't been on the mat yet.
Yeah.
We've got a deal, actually. If he comes and golfs with me, I will roll with him.
Oh.
It hasn't come up yet. He hasn't set that tee time, so...
You say come and golf with me.
Yes.
You flew in from Boise.
Yes,
you
sir.
now live in Boise.
Yes, sir.
What's your background? Give us your grow up. Where'd you come from?
I moved to Idaho when I was 10. Was in Kansas before that, but I'm pretty much say I'm from Idaho, So grew up on the east side in rural Idaho, not over in the city, Boise. And then I bounced around to a couple colleges, but ended up at Boise State to go through their athletic training program. Graduated, I don't want to say how long ago. Did an internship with the Colts the summer of my senior year. And then I actually worked for the founder of Ready Rebound, Luis, at a clinic in Scottsdale, Arizona for a little while. So that's kind of how my relationship with Luis started. He worked with Luis before that, even before that.
Yeah, he was a student of mine.
And, and then one of my good friends, Pete, who I went through the athletic training program with, we kind of both worked together at different areas, PGA Tour and now Ready Rebound and stuff like that. So that's kind of how it all comes together, with a whole lot of different avenues in between there. But
And Logan, I will say, he's a humble dude, extremely smart, major hard worker, and really possesses a lot of talents and a lot of other things. And a big part of that, part of what I've enjoyed about working with him is his ability to look at a problem and find some technical solutions for it. So it's helped us a lot on the EMI side of what we do. A big part of what we do for our first responders is we not only do we do the assessments on them, but we take that information, process that information, and then provide them a exercise program that is provided via an app. This app will connect to their smart device. It'll track sleep cycles and heart rates, and we can put meal plans in there. They have communication with us in there. It's one-on-one visits in there. It's a really neat platform, and this guy is the one that really kind of put it all together. He's, not only has had experience in that, but also just the ability to build content out and make things go well.
Must be an ATC thing.
It's in the nature.
Yeah, it's really helped us to distribute what we do to a larger audience. I think this year we'll hit pretty close to about 5,000 assessments that we've done on first responders.
Wow.
And so, being able to provide that information to him, and it's been pretty awesome. So I've enjoyed working with him. So
awesome. Well, let's just, based on that, let's just talk about why you are here in the St. Louis area then, because we've done a podcast with you on the Vital Wire, on our practice podcast for Vital Performance, and we did that remote. We zoomed you in, and then Sunday I get a text message saying, "Oh, by the way, I'll be in St. Louis in about an hour and a half. What are you doing?" So I was
sorry for short notice.
So we've captured you guys here on site.
Yeah,
what are you guys doing in St. Louis?
working with Monarch Fire Protection District. That's gonna they've got a little over 100 firefighters here.
110.
They signed up for our program, so we're running them all through the AMI. It's been a crazy busy first 2 days here. They've bought in. It's a great department, honestly. They've bought in a lot better than some of the other areas we've been. And then from top to bottom, we've done battalion chiefs, admin, the guys on the front line. So everybody's been through up to this point. It's been
And this is with Ready Rebound.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, one of the things that, some of the feedback I get around the EMI is, sometimes people will say, well, it takes too long. It's, 15, 20 minutes or whatever. And,
right.
The fact that Logan and I in 2 days have been able to assess by ourselves 64 people.
Yeah, that's wild.
Tells you that, it is a pretty efficient process. And I would say we spend a fair amount of time covering reports with people. So we not only do the assessment, but we take the time to actually explain the results to them. And so, to be able to do that with that number of people makes it a pretty efficient process.
Oh, it's so efficient.
I've always kind of questioned when I have teams and organizations that will say, well, that just seems like too much time for me. And, and you can attest to this, for the value of the information that you get in that short period of time, to me, it's totally worth it.
Oh, yeah, and the amount of data you get, too.
Oh, my God,
so
3,500 data points.
Yeah, so much.
For every assessment that we do.
In like 15 minutes.
Yeah. And two, it's like every single year that goes by, just the amount of information that I'm learning, like I'm going to be presenting a lot of stuff at the conference on some of the things that we're seeing with first responders and the correlation of pelvic stability to loss of balance.
Yeah.
So number one mechanism for injury in firefighters is slips, trips, and falls. And so part of what we're seeing is that those who lack pelvic stability end up having greater losses of balance. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And those, obviously, one of the major risk factors for slips, trips, and falls is increased frequency of loss of balance.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what it allows us to do is not just go to, okay, loss of balance, why are they losing their balance?
Right.
Because they don't have the pelvic stability. Now we can create training program to address that specific issue.
Yeah.
So
That's as we've done this on our athletes with our pure athlete evaluation, once I let Aaron run the process, and I just kind of drop some value for all of our parents. And for those of you listening, it's like the best way I have found to talk about this directly to them very, very quickly. They're like, oh, well, his core's strong. He's got the six pack, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I'm like, well, that's great. And what I have learned, right, wrong, or indifferent, this is kind of my verbiage, is it's like, well, there's a big piece of what we're going to call the core that is missing that nobody wants to talk about. Or they just, I wouldn't say want to talk about, they just haven't talked about it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's pelvic core. Right. And so with part of the AMI and the exercises we put them through, it's like we're basically very dynamically in different angles and sections of the body being able to isolate, okay, what area of that portion of the core, along with other things, but we're talking core right now, is there a deficiency in, and where at specifically, not just your big good look muscles.
Yeah. And that's, part of the beauty of looking at movement so much is, again, I'm always amazed at how much I'm actually learning. I keep referencing the conference, but I was putting together a slide for that conference related to just side plank.
Yeah.
Like, who would have ever guessed that you could see something on a side plank like a tibial drop and recognize that there is a ankle weakness, anterior tib peroneals, that puts that person at a higher risk for an ankle sprain from a side plank.
Yeah.
Like, I would have never guessed that. Or shoulder position and the relation of the shoulder position to serratus anterior weakness and risk for rotator cuff injuries and labral tears. Like, I never knew that.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's one of the things that I absolutely love about doing this project and for so long is I'm constantly learning new stuff. And, I'm excited for you guys because, there's some things in the works that we're still working on. One of the things that, I'm pushing hard for, number one is speed of pelvic loss.
Yeah.
Just like speed of dynamic valgus, we know that speed matters. It matters everywhere in the body. It matters in the elbow, and it matters in the shoulder. It matters in the knee. I think it matters in the hip.
Oh,
Force equals what?
Right.
Mass times acceleration.
Yeah, and so part of part of what we're validating now is the ability to measure and quantify the speed of pelvic loss, because I think there's a strong correlation to that. The other thing is too, is because we're able to get flight time and we're able to get body weight. There's a physics calculation that you can determine force output.
Okay.
So one of the things that I'm super interested in is the variance in force drop. So force over time, like if you drop X factor, how big does X have to be before you start being at risk?
Right.
Like if your force drops off, 10X between rep 1 and rep 10, does that put you at greater risk for an injury? I think so. But part of that is first being able to measure it correctly. And so that's part of what we're doing right now, is being able to validate that we can measure that correctly and then start reporting that. So right now in the raw data, that's actually being tracked. Yeah. So the next step is to really validate that and then come back and then start reporting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be super cool.
Absolutely. And you just saying that, I just light bulb moment, because so we'll get into more of Dr. Trent's passion here in just a second. I'm going to segue right on into it. But you saying that and the amount of force loss load, you can go from both sides of it.
Yeah.
In the racing world, that's what I like to do for fun. In the dirt racing world, that's almost a very similar conversation that I get to discuss with myself and friends that also race, is the load portion of it or the force portion of it, because at some point in time, even the more force you add or less force you add makes the car do something different. So same thing is, it's like how much force or how much lack of force, one way or the other, is the breaking point of loose or tight. And it's the same thing. It's like that's injuring the car. So for me, in my own analogy, it's like we all use our own. You can think of a dance analogy too. So it's so good that, for those of you listening, it's like it's very important, because if you have too much load on something, it's like a kickstand effect too. Yeah. Kickstand, put the kickstand out on the bike, and you can sit on the bike, and then two people sit on the bike. Eventually that gives out, and then vice versa. It's like, okay, well, if you are literally losing the amount of force you can put into something with the amount of force that's on you, now you're talking, and this is where I love the physics side of it.
See, I'm absolutely a physics fanatic.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, one of the things that I'm seeing recently is that, so we measure the Trendelenburg, the retro Trendelenburg, by what it does to your center of mass. When it pitches your center of mass lateral to the limb, when you land, what it actually does, if you look at the force vectors, it drives the knee into dynamic valgus. So what I'm starting to see some correlation with is when people move into that retro-Trendelenburg position, is sometimes those are the times where they have the max a magnitude of dynamic valgus and their speeds are at the highest. Because when they land, that center of mass is placed over here, and the force vector drives it basically into a dynamic valgus position. So that's part of the conversations I've had in the past with Timothy Hewitt, who's a big biomechanist. He actually has the EMI system now. I think for the first time, because for a lab to collect the level and the amount of data that we do, just that Logan and I have done, that would take them, 6 months. What we've done in 2 days. So being able to collect data at that level, I think we're going to just start to see things that we never knew even existed. Like I didn't know that existed. Right. And more importantly, what it does for us from a training perspective. I think that is so cool. That's one of the things that I love the most about being a part of this entire project. Is the ability to be able to add that back to the knowledge base and go towards my end goal. Because the whole reason I started this project, 22 years ago, was to start to do something on a large scale to help to prevent ACL injuries in kids. That's the whole reason I started this. You don't make a lot of money doing this. You do it for a purpose and a passion, and that's what the passion was.
So real quick, in our best summary we can do, give us what Trendelenburg is, because I think if people knew, it's very simple.
Yeah. So if you're standing on your stance leg, let's say I'm standing on my left leg, and your right pelvis drops, that is a Trendelenburg.
Yep.
And basically, what it's indicating is on the left leg, the stance leg, is that your glute medius is giving in and allowing the pelvis to drop. Because what has to happen is the glute medius has to contract eccentrically to prevent the pelvis from dropping, especially during load phase. So the other, in a closed kinetic chain, what the glute medius also does is it's an abductor and external rotator. So what it prevents is dynamic valgus in a closed kinetic chain.
You're right.
So in the absence of the pelvis itself moving, then the femur moves if the glute is weak. So that being said, the glute weakness can be identified both by femur movement as well as pelvic movement.
Yeah. And this is why we've done the test. This is why we have adopted it as part of the pure athlete evaluation we do, is because we deal with a lot of dancers. And like you said, a lot of people who jump up and down, basketball players, football, dance, cheer, whatever it is, they take a jump. And if they're in one of those scenarios, Trendelenburg, retro, we can literally give you the vulnerability of, here's what we need to fix and why.
Right.
Did you have this when you were a part of the PGA? Was the AMI a part of any of that?
Nope.
No?
Hadn't. I mean, I was actually introduced to his name in 2020. I was still out on tour, so that's when I first heard about the AMI. Because, I mean, out on tour, we could have maybe introduced something like this, but it probably wouldn't have been taken too serious because there's no rotational aspect. And that's what all those guys care about. You can talk all day about your lower body stability and stuff like that, and we're like, whoa, how's it going to help me? So, anyway. But no, I didn't know about it then. I wish I had, honestly. I wish I knew about this when I was in high school. I see so much stuff in myself that I could have fixed long ago if I had even a smidgen of the information that we get, now. So
yeah, that's what a lot of our parents say. Is like, where have you guys been? And how we didn't know about this sooner. All of this too.
So what would you say from the ATC side of it, and as invested as you have been with this? I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you, because we've done 30-ish. We haven't really heavily launched it yet, and we've already done 30 since July. Right. Why would you say, why do high school athletes or even younger, why should they do this now? What is the importance for them to do this now?
Now? I mean, the sooner you can learn about yourself, the better off you're going to be. Because just like we were talking about the Trendelenburg, a lot of that is patterning. They drop that hip. They just think it's normal. It's the body's normal thing to do. It's not necessarily always a weakness. Yeah. If you point it out to them, they can correct it, and then that pattern's done. And then you move on to the next thing. And, it for me, in my issues that I had growing up, anterior pelvic tilt, rounded shoulders, led to a rotator cuff injury, surgery down the road. There's so many things like that we could prevent if someone is coming through and getting an evaluation 12, 13, 14, 15, whatever, whenever really is possible. Because I see it in my nephew right now. He's hyperkyphotic, the rolled shoulders, and things like that. Yeah. And it's just some of the things, the basic stuff that you could show them and teach them early on are going to prevent myriad of things as they go on through life, whether they're athletes or not, So,
that's why I love the video component that is on the AMI too, because whenever we bring our athletes back with their parents after their first visit to do the whole report. I write out a whole report so they have something to take with them that kind of explains everything that we talk about, but they see the video and they're like, oh, I never knew I looked like that. I never knew I did that. Because when they're at school lifting and stuff, they're not looking at themselves for their form. They're trying to see who can lift the most. Like, it's just how it goes.
When it's funny because, originally when we were putting together version 2, we were talking about not including the video, and I'm like, no, we absolutely have to include the video.
Video's huge.
Yeah.
Because to me, in some of the athletes that I've dealt with, I'm Joe Blow PT, and they're, rock star, pro athlete. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're trying to tell them that they're moving bad. They're like, who the hell are you? Like, you're the first person to ever tell me this. But when you show them, there's such power in actually them seeing it on themselves. Yeah. And I was telling one of our firefighters this yesterday, one of the other aspects of it is that when you see it on yourself, it's no different than in professional baseball. They talk to a pitcher who's coming in as a rookie, that by the time they come in as a rookie, that pitcher's probably pitched 15 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So they built these patterns, right? And they're trying to educate them and correct them, and they have a really hard time conveying that across.
Yeah.
But then when they film them and they show the pitcher, like, here's what you're doing, here's where it's falling apart, and here's how we correct it,
Right.
automatically, as soon as they see that on themselves, they're able to make a better correction. So, one of the things I always tell people is that when one of the things I do when I see somebody has a lateral shift, I have them film themselves.
Yeah.
Because the first step in correcting it is just making sure you're aware that it's there.
Right.
Like Logan said, a lot of times it's just patterns.
The first part of fixing a problem is admitting you have one and visually seeing that you have one and taking it very seriously, because then there's all kinds of things that we can do on the back end, depending what the AMI shows, depending what the videos show, then training properly and specifically, again, making them aware of movement patterns. The big thing for us is they're growing these athletes different today.
Yes.
You've seen it. I've seen it. It's like what we were doing when we were playing big ball back in the day. And I was blessed to be one of those athletes. It's like, I would hate to play against 16-year-olds today.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, these kids, and it's like you said, it's like you can't do this early enough, because, I mean, that now the other components that are changing too are things like turf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've had this huge conversation of, thank God we're doing the AMI evaluation, which we should probably simply explain what exactly that is and strapping the technology to. But it's like, we're starting to wonder, like, how many athletes could we be saving careers of just based on the uncontrollables that people are controlling as far as turf? And then you also have different components, which in your other passion in line of jiu-jitsu, and what does that component look like? What are they, what mats are they on? What's the surface involved? So now you have all this biomechanical conversation, all this movement, coupled motion, you've got all of these things, movement of mass, and now what we haven't talked about yet is the surface.
Yeah.
And how many careers are we potentially saving because of this?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here with a big smile on my face
I know.
because, Joe Blow, PT from Phoenix, Arizona, who, started this on a passion to see kids in St. Louis being affected by something that was built out of a passion. That's really freaking cool.
Yeah.
That is, the true, following your true calling. I've always felt, I've told people this before, this was not created by me. This is created by God putting me on a path to leverage the talents that I had and the talents that he gave me to do a greater good.
Yeah.
And so, I hearing you talk and I'm just sitting here smiling because it's really cool to me, because that's the whole reason I did this.
Yeah.
I want to be able to impact kids across the globe, and to see that spreading, just, oh my God, it's so cool. It's taken way too long, but but it's cool. It's cool to see. As far as the mechanics go, there's a lot of literature out there about turfs and and the surfaces. They've gotten so much better than what they used to be, and there's a lot of I would say somewhat conflicting research related to that, and shoe wear and things like that. And so what I always tell parents is, you're not going to change that. You're not going to change the turf that they're on. Obviously you can be an advocate. If you've got some bad turf, you can be an advocate to help change that. But at the end of the day, what you can change is how your athlete is actually, how their limbs respond on that turf.
Right.
For so many years, we sat there and watched basketball games with the young female basketball players doing jump shots and their knees colliding towards midline. And we just thought that was normal. Like now a lot of people look at that and like, oh my God, we got to do something about that. So I think, to your point, doing these, part of the reason the AMI was designed the way that it is was meant to be something that could be implemented in mass physicals in an efficient manner that provided clinically meaningful information. That was the whole goal for me, is not just to provide data and not to just provide information, but to provide clinically meaningful information that you can actually do something with that and impact that data.
Yeah.
So, and that has always been my goal at the EMI, is to continue to drive the path of development so that we are constantly doing things that are doing clinically meaningful information, so that we can actually do something on that.
Yeah.
And that's how you impact it.
Yeah, and you said it perfectly. It's us bringing up the turf and having that conversation. We're interested to see, and that's really the most frustrating part about our jobs. And you guys probably can have a sense of this too. Is it's like we can't go back and say, okay, we're never going to do the AMI. We're going to let you play your career, and we're going to see if you actually do get hurt.
Right.
It's like, but at the end of the day, it's like, who wants to even find out? Right? It's like, who wants cavities in their mouth? Well, brush your teeth. Okay, yeah, let me brush my teeth. I'll do that. I'll take the preventative measures. Right. So like you said, it's like the uncontrollable for the most part is the surface that you play on.
Right.
Yeah.
If your school, if your university, if your club program is going to put down turf, like you said, you can be an advocate. You can try to stand up if that's not, but at the end of the day, it's down there.
Right.
What can you control?
Right.
How your body moves, functions, trains, how you build it going forward to counteract it.
Absolutely.
So it's, that's the biggest thing. And that's why we've chosen to do this too. And we're grateful that you guys have pushed this and you've come up with this because it is, whether you want to believe it or not, it's having a big impact. You've done good work. I'm excited for that.
Awesome.
Because we are using it. And even of the 30 we've done, come January 1, we've got a whole program we're going to roll out to really mass get these done here. We're hoping to potentially have to order a couple more units to be able to do multiple physicals at the same time. And our goal is to, like, when we started thinking about the Pure Athlete evaluation and she brought up AMI, and we got in touch with Dorsavi and we made all that stuff happen. We got in touch with you over an email. It's because we wanted to change the game on how student physicals are done. It's like, hey, let me go to my chiropractor, or primary care does it for free. And it's like, okay, your eyes are good. You don't need contacts or anything. You don't have any gross scarring or no big injuries. Looks good. Thanks, bye. And it's like, whoa. Like I said, they're building these kids different. And it's like, no, we are not a $20 valuation. But all of these parents, like you guys have said, it's like, where was this before?
Well, and the other thing too is that, part of, early on when I first launched the EMI, when we first launched the EMI, Dorsavi and I was really pushing a message of prevention. And what I've found is, at the end of the day, biomechanics is biomechanics. If you improve how someone moves, you improve the way that the force is attenuated along the system, which means that you reduce injury. But also, if you improve the way someone moves, kinetic energy transfer is better and power output goes up. And so, part of it is really educating parents on the fact that when you improve these biomechanics, not only are you doing an injury reduction, but you're also improving performance. And we've seen that in quite a few things that we've done where we've seen power output go up, vertical jump goes up, sprint speed goes up, because you're improving the efficiency of the system. So, for parents, not only is this a great thing to do to preserve your young athlete, but also to help your athlete be the best athlete that they can be.
Run faster, jump higher, more coordination, more balance. So, Logan, as you started in on this, what? Let's go back to, what'd you say, 2020 was when you first really heard about this, and Joe Blow PT over here. What? So, what would you say your passion is behind this? What really brought you in and like, man, this shit's cool. Like this speaks to me.
Well, even before I met him, I was starting to learn about movement about 4 or 5 years, prior to that. Being an athletic trainer, I was always, when I was going through school, I was always like, I'm never going to be a personal trainer.
Same.
It's one of those things, life kind of leads you in funny directions, right? In 2008, I had the opportunity to become a general manager of a gym, and they didn't train on staff, so I got a certification. Started training clients, and I found like you can make a huge difference in that setting. And so that was my initial introduction to how movement can help. I got a NASM certification, PES, CES, and that was kind of like the bridge between ATC and personal training, kind of taking those concepts of movement and corrective exercise into the personal training realm. And then moved on to get my FMS, which he looks down on me for. but at the time before, that's that was kind
Yeah,
of
that
the
was the-
standard.
That was
you
it.
know, that
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
that, if you were going to do something, that's what you did.
And FMS stands for?
Functional movement screen. And then that kind of played into my TPI, the Titleist Performance Institute certification that I got, for golf, which is kind of the basically same thing. I mean, Gray Cook and what's his name developed it together. So it's a lot of the same concepts going into both. But it always drove me crazy, especially when I was doing my FMS certification, that there was groups of us doing it on one person, and we would come out with different scores.
That's what I never understood.
I hated that part of it. And they were only different by 1-3 points, but then that fell in the same category of, what movement protocol you're going to administer anyway. And so it's like, well, is that really, is it really beneficial? Right?
Yeah.
So I'm always, my wife gives me crap about it, but I'm a black and white guy pretty much. I'm getting more gray the older I get, both here and in my thought processes. But I like to know exactly what's going on, and that system gives me that, which is great. And what I love about it is I love testing fit people, the guys that work out.
Yeah.
And then they see the score and they're like, 70%. What?
Yes.
What?
Yes, that always happens to us.
And I'm like, well, I mean, you rocked your plank, but your lordotic curve is out of control. We got that anterior pelvic tilt we got to get on top of, and you got that butt wink at the bottom of your squat we need to address. There's a couple ways we can do that, and things like that. I was like, I know you got a six-pack, doesn't mean your core is amazing. You know, that's
How do we base our health in this country?
Six-pack.
How we look
Yeah.
and how we feel,
Yeah.
Yep.
not how we function.
Yeah.
And like you said, the very black and white in our terms is subjective versus objective.
Yeah.
For sure.
And having the objectibility
For sure.
versus the subjective. And like you said, with the FMS, it's like at the time, it's like we there needed to be something, and there was a lot of plausibility. I too got the TPI, and Greg Rose is on my list too
Right. That's the name
to
I
meet.
couldn't think of, yeah.
But it's and what I tell people with that is it's like, okay, we've done the dynamic right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Now the rotational evaluation we can do through the TPI.
Yeah.
So we compile that as 2 of probably 7 or 8 different points that we do with our pure athlete evaluation.
Yeah.
I do the TPI with them as well. So it might be static, but it still provides. I mean, we just tested everything dynamic. So let's go ahead and look
Yeah.
at both sides, but
sure.
also the rotational
Yeah.
components.
And a lot of times the TPI that you do, it always confirms what I already saw in the AMI too. So it's another data point to give them too.
Sure.
In the same aspect, you're like, okay, in the video, did you see this? Okay, now I'm going to show you how it actually happened when you did the TPI.
So with what you're doing this week here at Monarch Fire Department,
Yeah.
you do all these tests. You guys leave out Friday, Saturday. What's the plan going forward? What do you do with? So you've gone over the report with them. Is there a return date? Like, is there a retest? What do these guys get, or guys and gals get
Yeah.
post testing?
I'll let you go.
Yeah, that's me.
This is literally the same dynamic.
Dr. Trent and I
Yeah,
just sit
same
back.
dynamic right there.
So when I first came on, there was a workout app. I was very familiar with workout apps because I had one in my personal training business, and so when I got a hold of the app, I was like, that was my first uncomfortable conversation with Dr. Trent here. I was like, this needs to change. This is not what's gonna be long term.
Yeah.
And at the time, our CFO or whatever his title was like, that's fine. Let's do a tech review. I got together with everyone threw in what they thought would be the most beneficial aspects of what we were going to go with moving forward. I downloaded, I can't remember, 7 or 8 different apps.
Yeah.
I lost track of how many, both as a user and a provider, built programs in them, took them to the gym, tried working out with them, all that kind of stuff. It came back around to the app that somehow my wife had found years ago. We go through Trainerize.
Okay.
It's very functional. It's one of the big things was scalability. A lot of the apps out there are built for a personal trainer who's got 100 clients or maybe up to 1,000. And I'm
Right.
like,
Wow.
well, that's great, but what about 2,000? I
Right.
mean, we've got 1,800 in one department.
Yeah.
So this thing in 5 years is going to be a lot bigger than 1,000. So started the transition, built that all out. Unfortunately, at the time with the company budget, there was no one else to shoot the exercise videos. So I spent still spend
Logan is
gym.
our fitness model.
Yeah, he's the model.
He loves to
I love to tell
loves to
everybody our
say that.
fitness model and
Not only
certified
does he
athletic
have
trainer.
six-pack abs, he has
Yeah.
a strong pelvic core, and his,
Yeah.
He's got
So
a strong pelvic.
yeah.
his Trendelenburg is on point.
So back to the question is, like, I built out 3 basic programs depending on what we see on
Yeah.
the AMI to start them out with. Those workouts change every 4 weeks to keep it fresh. I mean, if you're not keeping it fresh, people are just gonna.
Yup.
And even as fresh as you can keep it and as engaged as you keep it, it's fitness. Like, they're great for 2 to 3 months, and then so you got to try to keep them engaged. Then they'll come back. Some guys, I just had a guy from Memphis who we tested in July, activated yesterday. So it's like. The progression side of it, this is getting way too deep, but the
you're
progression
good.
side of it,
I
I
love
couldn't
it.
get into periodization or anything like that.
Right.
It's kind of generalized as far as that goes, but they have direct access to me. They can message me anytime and say, hey, man, can we step this up? Can we do this? I'm looking to cut 10 pounds, my hip hurts. What can I do? All that kind of stuff.
I love that.
Every month they get fresh workouts. Once a month we do a hydration survey, a sleep survey, and we put out educational materials, whether that's me and him talking about protein or nutrition, or we send out, there's a video that a firefighter in Tacoma did. It's a documentary. The name is slipping my mind right now, but it's all about what they deal with and the PTSD that goes on within, and it hits home. I send that out because that's one of the biggest things that our company is trying to address, but it's a very hard topic, the mental health side of all of this.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Because some of the things these guys see and do and deal with on a daily basis and then have to take home with them, it's unreal.
Yeah.
And it's getting worse.
Yeah.
What people don't understand is, with the changes in budgets and the changes in staffing, we have some police departments that are down 600 officers.
Yep.
So what that means is that, there are certain departments have stopped investigating certain very serious crimes.
Yeah.
Because they don't have enough officers to do it.
Yeah.
And so now they're coming off a 12-hour shift. They get to go home from sleep for 5 hours,
Right.
and they got to be back on shift.
Yeah.
And yet, I actually have a good friend who's a defensive tactics trainer for police officers, and he's like, and then people expect you to be a lawyer when you pull them over, to have a law degree, so you understand every single law.
Yeah.
They expect you to have a psychology degree,
Right.
to know who's mentally unstable and who's not. They expect you to be a master negotiator. They expect you to be a firearms expert.
Yep.
And at the same time have empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
On top of all that, and you're operating on less sleep.
Right.
So the mental health piece is huge. We're trying to address that. Part of the app that we have is tying into the whole sleep thing. And really, we were actually talking to one of our firefighters about this yesterday. Some of the work that I do with military, I didn't realize, and I should have realized, but I didn't realize, is the impact that sleep has on cortisol levels and what that does for testosterone. The average special operations guy is low T.
Yep.
You would never expect
Right.
the most alpha males
Yep.
to be low T. And why are they low T? Well, because number one, their sleep cycles are all jacked
Yep.
up. Number two, they're under a tremendous amount of stress.
Yep.
So you add all of the things that they're exposed to,
Yep.
all of which boost cortisol levels and suppresses testosterone.
Preach.
Yeah. So there's so many aspects of it. One of the things, and you and I have talked a lot about this, and that's one of the things I love about what you're doing with Pure Athlete, is really addressing the holistic portion of the athlete.
Yeah.
Not just treating their knee, but also addressing their nutritional needs, addressing their psychological needs,
Yeah.
addressing their spiritual needs.
Yeah.
Really holistically approaching an athlete. That to me that's different, and it's what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, I don't know if you were part of that conversation the other day, or I don't know if we talked about it when we were at dinner, but the Pure Athlete is wrapped around 3 major pillars, and it's mental, physical, and relationships, and the mental health side of it. And I've gone on record. There's a reel out there saying it, and I from the bottom of my heart, I am sick of seeing in this aspect everybody, but I'm sick of seeing student athletes overdose, jump out windows, feel like they have nobody. And just to bring it full circle as part of the AMI it's like that's part of our prevention process with this, because what happens to mental health when there's an injury or with a firefighter? What if they injure themselves trying to get a kid out of a building and something bad happens? It's like the PTSD that can come from that, the mental health scenarios. It's like, and that's why, we can go down a rabbit hole and build value, justify, and all the, and really get deep into a hole on why what you guys are doing is so important. But at the end of the day, they're people. I don't care if you're an athlete, a firefighter, a police officer. I don't care if you're a 70-year-old grandma that wants to have a hell of a time on a Disney cruise with your grandkids. It's like this evaluation is for everybody. But it can provide a whole lot of prevention, and it can provide a whole lot of answers and proper answers. And with what you've done with your training side, that's exactly where we're headed to. And is, okay, what do they get on the back end? And how often and what? And at the end of the day, just so everybody knows, you have to do the work. Like, take the evaluation, the $200, $300, $400, whatever people are charging for this now. We're probably going to do a first of the year offer where we're going to give 10 people the opportunity at the first of the year to just do it.
Nice.
And just give it away to 10 people that want to take advantage of it. But you have to do the work. And
for sure.
Because the data is there. It's not subjective. It's objective.
It's there.
Into the person has to own it. That's probably one of the biggest things that I always try to get across to people is that I can give you all the information, I can give you all the knowledge. Part of the reason that we do all the education is give them the why behind why are you doing this. Part of the reason that we sit down and we explain the results and the correlation of those results to them as an individual is so they own it. You got to own it. I mean, you can't, nobody's going to do it for you. You got to play an active role in it. And that's one of the things that I always try to bring across to athletes is that you have to have an active role in this process. If you're not willing to do that, quite honestly, you really shouldn't waste your money seeing me. Because I'm not going to do anything for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to provide you all the tools and all the resources and all the knowledge you need to make it successful. But if you don't do your part, it's not worth it.
And I'm going to do it with you. Because if you're going to put the time in and be invested, like 100%. I don't do all of this. We don't put out the content we do, the programs we provide, the mental health, the empathy that we don't do that for you. We do that with you because those who are invested in themselves are going to get the best investment from us. Because if you don't do this, I've got plenty of other people who are doing this. So if you're willing to take charge and take action, hell yeah, we'll bring you up. You're going to be on that elevator. We're going to the top for sure. Which is super, super good.
Yeah, we always ask like the athlete themselves, like, is this something that you want to do? Like their parents are always going to say yes to whatever's going to make their athlete better. But we always are like, okay, if they weren't here, like, what would your answer be? So that's like,
and that's what's cool with what you guys have done, and now we're taking it and implementing it. Is at the end of our evaluations, they always say, well, what do we do? Because we do an entire, the chiropractic evaluation, we do TPI, we do the AMI, we do in a few other steps along that as well, which I'll kind of keep hidden in the background. But at the end of the day, she goes over the report. We're both sitting there. I go over my report, the structural neurological side of it, and they go, well, what do we do? Now, how do we fix it? And it's like, so glad you asked, because that question alone tells us two things. They're invested. We built value. Cool. They see it. But also, too, they want to take action. And then we look at the athlete and we go, let's stop here. Let's pretend your parents aren't in the room. We're going to give you the opportunity to fix this, be better, achieve your goals. What are your goals? Well, we get that goal beforehand. If it's D1 or they want to go straight to the pros, it's like, okay, now we know how serious you think you want to take this. But we as providers know, okay, if you just want to do this leisurely and not get hurt, great. But if you're trying to go D1, great. We have that answer already. And we go, do you want to do this? Is this something that you want to commit to? If they're going to bring you here every day, or if you need to drive here every day, is that something you're committed to? And we've had all but two say, yep. That's the biggest thing. Data and value.
For sure. For sure.
What else? Where do you want to go from here? That was good. I hope you all paid attention to that. Rewind it and take some of that in.
Well, the one thing that keeps coming up in my mind, and when we were talking about turf, is the early specialization of kids these days and club sports, and it's just year round, and that's where I see the AMI fitting with the youth population, is the fact that they might get stuck in that track. Like I see it with my brother's kids even, and it's cheer, but it's not sports, but it's almost worse. Like it's like year round. I mean, they go to Vegas, they go to Portland, they're going all over, and it does not stop.
No.
Yeah.
And I mean, my one niece has got an Achilles issue already. My other niece had a wrist issue, and I see if you can point out the information and try to get them moving the best they can, at least if they're not varying what they're doing outside of that, when they are focusing on their body, they get the variation and they get everything they need in there. And even though if it's not different sports, but I think even though athletes are growing bigger, faster, stronger these days, they're not necessarily better athletes than we've seen back in the day, because they're not growing up playing football and then going to wrestling or basketball and then baseball or track. They're just like, I'm a football player, or I'm a basketball player, or oh no, I'm not going to risk football because I'm a pitcher. And
right.
Nah,
And if I remember correctly, I think Dr. Andrews had published a paper on sports specialization, and you're 3 times more likely to suffer an injury if you specialize in a sport versus an athlete who is a multi-sport athlete.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a really powerful paper. And matter of fact, if you follow anything that Dr. Andrews does and talks about, that is like his major thing is sports specialization has truly been a pandemic for youth sports. And injury rates in sports. If you ever watch any of the things that he's doing recently, one of his life missions before, he moves on is to truly impact youth athletic injuries. And if you listen to any of the podcasts and ESPN interviews and things that he does, he talks about kids specializing in sports, and playing soccer year round, and not doing multiple sports, and two, what it does for athleticism, training in multiple sports and what that does for recovery and, just all aspects of it. So, to me, the sports specialization is huge, and it goes back to, we need to chill out sometimes, and, we really need to look at the person as a holistic and not just one dimensional, and, it's part of what I think, to your point, I think part of what feeds into the psychology, and I always used to tell my ACL, I have a course that I do for PTs on the AMI and on ACLs. And one of the things I always bring out is the psychological impact that an ACL injury has to an athlete, because today's athletes, their whole life has been athletics. Every time they go to a Thanksgiving dinner, everybody's always asking them about their sport. All the people they hang around are related to their sport. When they see their friends home from college, they ask them about their sport. And then they have an ACL injury, and all of a sudden, nobody wants to talk to them. They don't want to upset them, so they're not going to bring it up at Thanksgiving dinner. They're not hanging around the same group right now because they're injured and they're on the sideline. There's a huge psychological toll that takes on an athlete, especially ACL injuries, because they don't know if they're going to get back. There's periods of time during the rehab process where you're like, oh my God, am I ever going to be the same again? There's that internal psychological questioning, and it really wreaks havoc on an athlete, and so that's one of the reasons, in addition, that has really driven me to want to do something to impact ACL injuries on a large scale. And I go back to Dr. Andrews because that is one of his major missions in life, was to reduce ACL injuries in kids. So STOP, his program STOP through the American Academy of Sports Medicine is an amazing program. They try to do the right things, but what has it done in the last 10 years?
Right.
I mean, no disrespect to it.
Right.
But really, from a pandemic level, 250,000 ACL injuries in a year. Holy cow, that's a massive number. Like if that was COVID cases or the flu or something along that, it would be a pandemic.
The bell would be ringing.
The bell would be ringing. And when you look at the financial cost that's associated with that, $5 billion just for the primary injury. That doesn't include the meniscal injuries that occur down the road, or the osteoarthritis, or the re-injury rates of 28%.
Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing too that I don't know if you guys have caught wind on either is they're starting to do and come out with studies now that say from an ACL injury, the inflammation that's involved is something like, I want to say, don't quote me, but I'm going to try to I remember this appropriately here, is I think it's like 20+% increase in a cardiovascular incidence because of the inflammation and chronic inflammation from an ACL injury. And then back to your point is, and why we love working with you guys on this and learning more, we still have plenty to learn about the AMI, is with the student athlete or athletes in general and pro athletes too, the psychology side of it too. And I think what you're trying to say is they tie their identity to the sport that they do,
They are their
which
sport.
100%.
is something I and we actually want to separate. And give them the empowerment, the psychological fortitude, the encouragement, the confidence that, look, that is great. You are freaking awesome. You are the top 1%. You're a person. Look at you as a whole person. Do not let your outcomes, your label, your position, the number on your back be the defining person that you are.
For sure.
But it is, because they haven't talked about it, and now because of people like us that are sitting in this room, pat on all of our backs, it's going to be a big impact. So you're so right. We can come full circle with that very, very easily, which is why I think we all do what we do. Or why it's transitioned to be why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's funny you bring that up about them relating the identity, because have you watched the Kelsey documentary?
Yeah.
When he's struggling, he's sitting there in his living room like, I don't know what to be if I'm not a football player. Like it happens from the age, because he's been a football player since he was 12. And it's awesome. I love that you guys bring that up and are pointing that out to people and trying to make that separation early.
We always talk about like the post-athlete, like what happens after you're not an athlete anymore. So more to come on that too.
Because we're starting to put out courses too for, we're coming at it from both sides. We're giving resources for the parents so they can ask better questions.
For sure.
And you've probably been this too, especially in the training. It's real simple. It's like, who do we go to? Who do we trust? What is even out there for resources? But we want parents to begin to, if you can ask better questions, you get better answers. And if you can give them somebody to trust, you can make a bigger impact. So we're trying to create the bridge for parents to ask better questions, get better answers, and have a trustful source. But then we're also trying to inspire the kids, like, look, don't lose yourself as a student. Don't lose yourself as an athlete. You need to remember you're a person, you're a sibling, you're a future spouse, you're a great person in so many different facets. Don't lose yourself in just one. If something goes downhill or uphill, don't do this or this. Don't drop your head. Don't point your nose. We've started to really have bigger conversations on that as well. It's important. It's important.
So important.
It is.
What you got? Anything?
So much, and we're talking about.
Did we cover what you wanted to cover?
Absolutely.
Well, before we
There's
let
two words we haven't even mentioned.
I
yet,
know,
which
I
is
was
a
waiting.
Miracle. It's been 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, literally, he's probably just.
He's itching. He's itching for it.
Well, because this is going to come out, we'll drop this one as a special episode for sure. But you and I will meet up again in a short
Vegas.
7 days here in Vegas. What's going on in Vegas before we wrap this up?
Yeah, so in Vegas,
Logan, you going to Vegas?
No, I am not going to Vegas.
So I'm
Smart
speaking
guy.
at the Pro Sports Chiro Conference, which is a conference for chiropractors in the professional sports, so the NBA and NFL. And I was asked originally to speak on the EMI and some of the stuff that we're learning from the data, et cetera. And that expanded to now a 2-hour lecture where I'm doing lecture and lab. And they kind of moved me into a good spot. So I'm first speaker on Friday. Get to a little over 2 hours to talk. We're going to do an ACL lab, which I'm super excited about. Sharing some of the things that we've learned from the data and how we apply that for exercise prescription. So super excited about that.
Yeah,
it
that's
should
awesome.
be
Good for
really
you.
great. Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of great connections from there and be able to help to spread it in the chiropractic world, which I'm super excited about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I've had a few colleagues of mine already call and ask, and one about what's the evaluation we're doing, and two the pure athlete side as well. So it's been fun. So I'm going to meet you out there.
Yeah.
Erica and I are both going. Erin over here has a dance competition, so she's committed. We'll be there. I was super excited that you had said something.
Yeah.
You'd said something on the first podcast we did,
exactly.
and here we are a few short months later.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be doing a couple of seminars on the way. So I'm hitting one in Phoenix and one in Las Vegas for injury prevention and jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
So super excited about that. I'm doing one at Gracie Barra in North Phoenix, and then I'm doing one at Robert Drysdale's place in Las Vegas.
Awesome.
And that's a really big one because he's very well known in the sport. And come to find out, IBJJF Worlds is on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's going to be, I think, 800 competitors there fighting for Worlds, world
busy.
titles.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vegas is going to be a crowd.
Yeah, it's like Christmas 2 weeks early for you.
Exactly.
Literally.
Exactly. So exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, before we close out, is there anything you guys want to say? Anything you should know, or do you want people to get a hold of you guys? Do you want people to follow you? What's up?
I am launching a new business called the Athlete Lab.
Okay.
It is a cash-based physical therapy practice out of Nashville, Tennessee, focusing on ACL, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes, and mature athletes. Obviously, it's going to have a big center around the EMI. It's also going to be a functioning research facility, so I'm already starting to collect research data for some research partnerships that I have with a couple of universities. So super excited about that. So if anybody wants more information on that, they can always connect to me on Instagram. I am doing virtual visits out of there too.
Nice.
So for athletes that are looking for, some virtual information, maybe assessments and et cetera. So super excited.
Yeah, we'll have to come to Nashville.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure. Thank you guys for having us on.
Yeah.
This was awesome, man.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys for making time. I know it's your day
absolutely.
off. You've done almost 100 assessments in the past couple days here, so that's super cool that you guys made time. And if we can ever be a resource for you guys
we
here,
appreciate that.
either for yourselves or if you guys are in town, I'll play golf with you. I'm a member right across the
Yeah.
street. We can go play.
Please go play golf with him.
But also, if for some reason you have any clients out here that need anything, we'd
for
be
sure.
happy to help
Absolutely.
or give us a
Absolutely.
heads up. We'd be more than happy to be a
Yeah, and
resource.
we're always willing to learn. Like, I would love to learn from both of you.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. We'll be back out in this area.
Yeah.
We're doing Robertson Fire.
Well, I think you guys just walked into us inviting ourselves to your neck of the woods, too, so don't be surprised.
I like that.
I've never been to Nashville before.
I've always wanted to see the blue turf.
Yeah. Come on up, man. Come on up.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. We'll drop some links. We'll give you all the stuff. If you guys have any links you want us to put in the comments or in the description of this podcast, we'd be more than happy to do it. So go ahead, smash the like button, subscribe. Super excited for this as we close out 2023.
Yeah.
See ya.
See ya.